Good afternoon, everyone. Just want to welcome everybody to our special council session of Wednesday, November 29th, 2023. Welcome to our staff, council, our guests that are here for presenting, and anyone that may be watching the event. Call the meeting to order. We acknowledge that we're in Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. Would you call the roll, Shell, please?
Thank you, Your Worship. Mayor Scott.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Gilroy.
Present.
Councillor Gould.
Present.
Councillor Hotelling. Councillor Redmond.
Present.
Councillor McCormick is joining us via Zoom. Councillor Joseph.
Present.
Councillor Porter.
Present.
And Councillor Goodwin is en route.
Thank you, Shelley. That brings us down to administrative and procedural issues. 2.1, approval of the agenda. So everybody would have a copy of the agenda as circulated. Ask for a motion to approve that agenda, please. Moved by Councillor Hotelling, seconded by Deputy Mayor Gilroy. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Contrary-minded nay. Motion's carried. Business issues. 3.1, audit financial statements. I believe Amy, our Director of Finance, is going to lead us through this. Amy?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to do a brief overall summary of the results of the municipality in 2022-2023 from the non-consolidated statements, which were reviewed with the audit committee last week. This meeting included all members of council, so I'm going to do a very brief summary. These results are included in the audited consolidated financial statements. I'm then going to hand it over to Cindy for another very brief summary because she did she reviewed the consolidated financial statements in the same meeting last week. So kind of the high points at March 31st, 2023, the municipality had cash of about 27.5 million, an increase of about $1 million from the prior year. Much of that cash is to fund reserves. In reserves, we have about 6.4 million in operating reserves and 14.9 million in capital reserves for a total of 21.3 million. Deferred revenue did increase about 1.2 million due to the SSGF funding. And I draw your attention to that just so that we know going into budget that money is sitting there. It's not in reserves. There was a decrease in long-term debt of just over 1.1 million. There was one new debenture, one paid off debenture, and a couple that were refinanced. And in the fiscal year 22-23, the municipality had a surplus of about 2.5 million. There was a budgeted surplus of just over $500,000. Revenue was pretty much on budget and expenditures were 2 million under budget. And the two primary areas for that, as discussed last week, were an almost $900,000 payment for the broadband project that it's been a little bit delayed, so it'll likely come in this year, and about 750,000 in salaries and benefits due to vacancies in various departments. So we had trouble finding staff, so that's why we ran a surplus. So that's kind of the brief summary of our results, and then I'll give it over to Cindy to talk a little bit about the consolidated.
Thank you, Amy. So as Amy mentioned, we met last week with the audit committee to go over the audit findings letter, the management letter, and the draft consolidated statements in a bit of depth. The floor was open at that point to any questions. There have been no changes to the final numbers from what you were presented with last week based on the draft statements. There have been some formatting changes and some reallocations in the notes to correct disclosures, but no overall changes in the numbers that you were presented with last week. So the draft consolidated financial statements, I'm just going to remind you, the statements are prepared on a consolidated basis and include the county operations, all funds within the county, Cumberland Senior Care Corporation at 100%, Sunset Corporation at 100%, Sunset Residential Industries, and a percentage of CJSMA. Page 1 in the consolidated financials is the summary of management's responsibilities. As long as approval goes through today, we'll get Greg and Amy to sign that report. And page 2 on the consolidated statements is the audit opinion. That is what you are hiring us to provide for you. So we have provided a clean audit opinion, which means we believe the statements are fairly presented within the Public Sector Accounting Standards Board framework. And as the face of these statements were discussed last week, I'm not going to go into any detail on any of the statements. I just want to reiterate from a high level that The reserves that you do have earmarked for specific projects as per note 15 in that set of consolidated statements are in fact fully funded. This means you do have enough cash to fund the enough cash on hand to fund the projects that you have specified. I'm going to open the floor to any questions. I know that was very brief, but we did go through the numbers last week.
Yeah, thank you, Cindy. Appreciate that. We did go through these. So any questions from councilors in regards to Cindy or Amy's report today? Seeing none? Seeing none, there is a recommended motion there that council accept the recommendation of the audit committee, improve the municipality of the county of Cumberland's audited financial statements for the fiscal year ended March 31st, 2023. Somebody like to make that motion? Moved by Councillor Joseph, seconded by Councillor Gould. Any questions or comments in regards to the motion?
Can I just add one more point?
Yeah, sure, Cindy,
I just want
please.
to say, if no questions, my sincere thanks to the finance department here. Amy, Dina, and Marcy, a job well done in a very tough year with a lot of staffing changes. A lot of work to put the information together, and I just want to give them credit for sticking up with me for all my questions that I've thrown out for the last 2 months.
Thanks, Cindy. We really appreciate that. We try to remember on a regular basis, thank our staff, because we know where the work is all done, and we really appreciate it. So thank you, Amy, to your staff as well. No questions or comments. Call for the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Contrary minded, nay. Motion is carried. Thank you. Thanks, Cindy, and thanks, Amy. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've left the signature pages with Amy, so
I'll catch up between
Okay.
meetings.
Thank you. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
3.2 feasibility study for the use of geothermal energy in the greenhouse food production in the municipality of Cumberland. Mr. Hare.
Thank you, Your Worship. In council's package is a brief memo and copies of the slides that were presented at last week's council meeting by an SEC principal, Don McCormick, and representatives of the Department of Natural Resources and Renewables. Presentation was regarding the municipality's potential participation in a study for the feasibility of a geothermal greenhouse. If determined to be feasible, this project has potential to address both the use of geothermal energy in the Spring Hill area, whose potential is certainly well advertised, and food security in Cumberland County. The proposal, as outlined in the attached slides, is that the $120,000 cost of the study be funded equally by the three partners: municipality of the County of Cumberland, Nova Scotia Community College, and the Department of Natural Resources and Renewables. And it's proposed that the municipality's share of $40,000 be funded from reserves. And I think there's a proposed motion in that memo there, Your Worship. There we go. That council approve that participation and authorize the withdrawal, if necessary, of $40,000 from the operating reserve. So I'll leave that with you.
Yep, thank you. Appreciate it. So I'll read this. Suggested motion is the council approve participation in the feasibility study for the use of geothermal energy and the related impacts on food production in the municipality, subject to an appropriate contribution agreement. Further, that council approve a withdrawal of up to $40,000 from the operating reserve if necessary for this purpose. Somebody like to make that motion? Moved by Councillor Joseph, seconded by Councillor Porter. Sorry. Oh. Sorry, Angel, I missed that. Did you hear me? Thank you. Any questions or comments in regards to the motion? Or the agenda item, I should say. Seeing none, call for the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Or raise your hand. Aren't you minded, nay? Motion is carried. Thank you. 3.3 Municipal Capital Growth Program application. Mr. Walcrash, Director of Public Works.
Thank you, Your Worship. The province of Nova Scotia has called for applications to a new funding program, the Municipal Capital Growth Program. And it's open for water and wastewater projects, as well as projects addressing accessibility and climate change. These are 50% funding through the province. The other half had to be funded through municipal revenues or sources of money. Discussed projects in our upcoming capital budgets, years 2 through 5, and with the CAO, and we're putting forward a Parsboro waterline replacement project. It was in our second year of our capital plan. There's about 7 kilometers of plus 100-year-old cast iron pipe in the community of Parsboro in their water system, And this older pipe is prone to having lead and caulking in its joints, as well as more prone to breakage and discoloration in the water just due to its age and amount of time it's been in operation. The segments we're proposing to replace are on Atlantic Ave and Whitehall Road. These are near the end of one of our lines and cause a fair bit of turbidity. We're seeing some water breaks on that section, as well as on Templar Street, and that's some interconnectivity with newer pipes. So there'd be one piece of cast that's kind of in amongst a larger chunk of newer PVC pipe. The total cost of these using the end of results from the projects we did this year with a little bit of conservativeness would be about $1,367,000. There's no environmental impacts anticipated, and the ask today, as part of the application for funding, we need an endorsement of this project from council saying that this is your priority for this funding program. So Mayor Scott, I'm happy to try to answer any questions council may have for us.
Thank you, sir. So the recommended motion in your package is the council move to support the submission of the Parsboro Water Line Replacement Project for funding consideration under the Municipal Capital Growth Program. Somebody make that motion, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor Gilroy, seconded by Councilor Ribbon. Any questions or comments for Mr. Walcross regards this item? Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to perhaps emphasize a point that a bit of a short timeline on applications for this program, and as well that we sought to apply for projects that we'd already identified through the capital budget program. This particular project, we did make an application to the ICIP, essentially the Federal Provincial Infrastructure Program, and weren't successful. So just this is the next crack at available funding for this approved project that was identified as one of council's 5 capital priorities. So I just wanted to throw that piece of information into the conversation.
Thank you for that. So I don't know if you know this, Justin, or not, but so what we identified in our 5-year capital, how many kilometers of line were we considering in the capital program itself versus what we're asking here today for approval? Do you know? For Parsboro, I'm sorry, for Parsboro.
For Parsboro,
Yeah.
and we had broken up and allowed in the larger ICIP application. We had broken up over a number of years doing, 750,000, $1 million and a bit worth of work every year. Those numbers will escalate based on escalating costs, but a couple kilometers a year is what we were kind of aiming for. Maybe sometimes less if it's downtown, the installation be more complicated. So that was broken up over a number of years, and this would be what we were planning to do in the first year of that multiple year program of cast replacement. One of the reasons that we kind of scaled it to these streets was the size of the funding program in total. It's around $35 million to split up amongst all of the municipalities in the province. So we want to make sure it's something that's a reasonable size based on the size of the program that the province is making available.
Great, thank you. Councilor Gould.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, just a couple of quick things. The 1.3 million, that's a total project. So we'd be looking to get half of that from the grant and we'd pay the other half. Is that, Your Worship?
Sure.
Please. Yep. Thank
So
you.
the original funding, the original cost of the program when we drafted the capital budget last year, and certainly we're all well aware now of escalating construction costs and the escalating cost of sewer and water pipe. The budget estimate for this project was $795,000 or $800,000. Our plan at the time was to get 73 cent dollars from the infrastructure program and the rest to come from the water depreciation account. So we're sticking our oar in the water for 50% funding on this. We'd be looking to the water utility and depreciation funds likely to fund the balance of it. We want to see how successful we are, and then we'll fine tune the rest of the financing. But in broad strokes, that's what we're looking at.
And just one more, if I may. So in replacing these lines, we would run a standpipe to the property lines of all the existing water people.
Yep. Mr. Chris.
With the new rate study we've issued, we've been granted permission by the Utility Review Board to replace lead laterals the full length right to the foundations of people's basements. And part of the consideration we'd make in putting out capital money is making sure that those replacements for a portion of them were accounted for in the tender, and as they were come across, work with the property owners to replace those full length. That's a change from previous years in our capital programs, just because of the new rate study that was approved by the board and the new rules they approved within that rate study for doing that sort of work. So we would include that, and the numbers I've worked up have made some consideration for a portion of them being lead to full length.
It's only the lead ones that we would replace to the
So, and
property.
what about liability if something goes on and when we're digging up their properties?
We would, the contractor would be doing it, the relationship would be between the homeowner and the contractor, and they would have to come to an agreement. On Junction Road, there was a couple of those that did go to the foundation. They used, sometimes it made sense to dig based on what was landscaping. Sometimes it made more sense to do a pole, which was underground and not disrupting the surface. So there's a variety of tools that contractors dispose to do it, and then they would work with the homeowner to make sure that it suited what they needed.
And that this is at our cost end and the homeowner is no responsibility for costs.
Correct, for lead laterals.
Thank
If it was a
you.
normal copper or plastic, it would just go to the property line as we're used to.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Gould?
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Watercrest in regards to this item? See none, call for question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Countermanded nay. Motion is carried. Thank you, sir. Motion to adjourn, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor Gilroy. We are adjourned. Thank you, folks. So, ready into this? I know, but